I woke to the horrendous scraping sound of the door being forced open by something very strong. Scrambling to my feet in the dim light, I retreated to the far corner of the room alongside Zephyr, where we both realized we'd trapped ourselves. We snatched up the most dangerous things we could get our hands on. For him, a wrench, and for me, a flashlight. I aimed it at the door without turning it on yet, hoping that I'd be able to stun the whatever it was long enough for Zephyr to throw the wrench at it. Or something. Just as I remembered that turtledillos weren't built for throwing, the door opened the rest of the way. Something large hulked in the darkness. I switched on the flashlight and yelled wildly. Zephyr yelled too, and the unlikely creature in the doorway flinched, then thundered into the hallway with heavy steps. Listening was difficult over the blood pounding in my ears, but I thought it had stopped right around the corner. Still screaming, Zephyr huddled next to me. "Ah! Ah! What was that?" I answered with wide eyes. "That was a gorilla," I told him. "The smugglers took a gorilla." "Is that bad?" the turtledillo asked, waving his wrench. "Do they eat people?" "No," I said, looking down at him. "They are people, just a different kind. And there's going to be 80 flavors of hell raised when people find out that these guys kidnapped one to sell off-world." "So it's not going to eat us?" Zephyr lowered his wrench, looking back at the doorway. "No," I said, taking a hesitant step forward. "But we might have scared him enough that we could get hurt if we're not careful." I raised my voice, trying for gentle and apologetic in my native tongue. "Hello?" I called. "I'm sorry we scared you. We were scared too. Can you hear me?" There was a pause long enough that I started to doubt my training. All gorillas were supposed to recognize English. The people who had started the reservation resorts for these particular citizen animals had been English speakers, and it had stuck. But this one wasn't responding. A dark head peered around the corner. I made sure to point the flashlight at the floor. This lit things up well enough that we could all see each other and no one was blinded. "Hello?" I said again. "Sorry about that. Are you okay?" The gorilla grunted, bobbed his head, and made a hand sign that I recognized from long ago classes. "Yes." The next one was less obvious but clear enough. "Scared." I nodded in exaggerated fashion. "We were scared too," I repeated, hoping I knew enough gorilla sign language to get through this conversation. It was slightly different from the standard signs that everyone learned in school. I'd never expected to meet a gorilla, much less talk to one solo on an alien world. "My name is Robin," I said, pointing to myself. "This is Zephyr. He's a friend." I used the rockback word for his name, but signed it out in GSL at the same time, hoping that made sense. Translating between 3 languages was hard. The gorilla edged forward, still looking ready to run, and, conversely, ready to rip the wall open if startled. Silver fur showed over his shoulders, making him a male of at least 12 years old. The most dangerous 12-year-old I've ever met, I thought. The gorilla signed something that I recognized as a bird symbol, then pointed at me in a questioning way. It took me a moment, but then I nodded and agreed. Yes, Robin like the bird, and he is Zephyr like a breeze or wind. I also repeated Zephyr's name in both languages. Zephyr whispered urgently. "What's it doing?" he asked, and I remembered that he wouldn't have understood any of that. "Talking in sign language," I told him. "Give me a minute and I'll translate." The gorilla was already volunteering his own name. The sign he used stumped me, an embarrassing thing so early in the conversation, and I had to ask him to clarify. The additional signs took me a minute to put together. Fire, animal, flying, dragon. "Your name is Dragon?" He nodded vigorously. I kept my surprise to myself. Of course, the spacefaring gorilla would have a name that cool. I told Zephyr what his name was, having to explain the mythological earth creature, then having to interrupt that explanation when Dragon wanted to know where the giant stinging bugs had gone. Guess he's met the smugglers in person, I thought. Doing my best to be clear and brief, I explained that as far as we knew, the only 2 stinging bugs had been scared away by some people who looked like Zephyr. We didn't know if they would be back. It was at this point that we heard distant voices outside. I couldn't make out words or guess the species. The 3 of us looked around in unison, This kitchen had no windows. I certainly wasn't eager to stick my head past the invisibility field if I didn't have to. What other options did we have? "Maybe it's Rumble!" Zephyr exclaimed. He dashed into the hall, only pausing briefly before sidling past the large gorilla who regarded him with suspicion. I translated and followed as Zephyr ran down the tilted hallway in search of a window. Dragon stuck close, his heavy footsteps echoing my own. None of the rooms had windows, only sturdy metal walls with a few blank screens that might have been digital windows, but of course they were all dead. Zephyr hurried on. The ship's living area wasn't all that big, and we soon found ourselves in the cockpit. This didn't have actual windows either, but it did have computers that were still partly functional. One monitor flipped through readouts of the ship's systems. One was stuck on a layout of the ship that might have been useful if I'd had time to study it. One was broken, and one showed the sunlit forest directly in front of the ship. Distant turtledillos with guns picked their way through the trees. Not Rumble's crew, by the looks of it. These guys were painted in hunter's camouflage, wielding firearms that looked far too eye-catching for any underground crime ring to use. "Is one of those the owner of the forest?" I asked. "Well, it's not Rumble," Zephyr said in clear disappointment. "What does this mean? It's flashing." He pointed to the monitor that had held changing images a moment ago. Now it held two green triangles growing closer together with a flashing red border. "If this was human tech, I'd say it's an alarm of an approaching ship," I said, glancing instinctively at the ceiling. Dragon grunted for a translation again. As I obliged him, Zephyr came to his own conclusion. "If that's another ship, then those people will see it," he said, pointing at the screen. "And so will any watching cameras at the edge of the forest, unless it's invisible too." "Right," I agreed. "We can't tell from in here. Let's find the door." I turned to Dragon and said in English, "More bad bugs are coming. We need to see if the good people, like Zephyr, will see them too. Come on." Then I ran for the side of the ship that was torn open. Dragon and Zephyr followed. Nothing stood out at first. The hole was big enough to show blue sky, but the spaceship that must have been approaching was nowhere to be seen. "Invisible!" Zephyr spat. Then a square opened in the sky, and something mechanical reached toward us. "There!" I said. Dragon grunted loudly. "They don't see it," said Zephyr. "They're not yelling. How do we get them to look this way?" "We yell first," I said. "Dragon, we need to be loud!" Without waiting, I launched into every full-voiced animal impression I could think of. If those turtledillos prowling the woods were searching for earth animals, there was no way they would miss this, especially when Dragon roared next to me. It was more than a little terrifying. The sound shook my lungs and put my eagle screeches to shame. Zephyr flinched, then started screaming. It wasn't an earth animal, but it added to the racket. I listened for a moment. Startled shouts reached my ears. My satisfaction was short-lived, though. The mechanical arm retracted into the ship above, to be replaced by what was clearly a weapon. "Oh no! Get inside! Get inside!" I exclaimed, pushing the others back under cover. "I think we started a fight." The muffled pop of turtledillo guns joined the shouting. I raced back to the cockpit and its view screen. By the time I arrived, with Dragon thundering behind me and Zephyr scuttling after, the screen was full of gunfire. None of the turtledillos looked hurt yet, but I wouldn't be making any bets. The ship vibrated. I gripped the console as the floor tilted ever so slightly. Then a strange light filled the screen, barely audible screeching sounded, and the vibrating increased. "What's happening?" Zephyr asked, nearly falling over. "I don't know," I said. Dragon whined, then growled and punched the floor as if to make it behave. The turtledillos were still shooting, barely visible through the glare, but they were also edging backwards and getting smaller. "Oh dear gods, we're lifting off," I exclaimed. "What?" Zephyr demanded. "No!" he yelled at the screen. "Shoot harder, you idiots!" I looked wildly around the room for ideas. Dragon signed, "Stinging bugs make building fly again." "Yeah," I said. "I guess we should have run for the trees instead, though we might have gotten shot." The light on the screen shone brighter before shutting off completely. Then the floor dropped 6 inches and slammed sideways. All 3 of us fell over. Everything was shouting and thudding and stuff falling on us. I ended up curled into a ball, protecting my head while alien coffee cups and pencils and crap rained down. Things fell off the wall that I couldn't even begin to identify. It occurred to me that this cockpit had never been designed to handle inertia of any kind. Wonder why? When everything was still, Zephyr sat up first, undaunted in his natural armor. "Everybody okay?" he asked. "I'll live," I told him, uncurling and looking to Dragon, who was signing madly. Huh, I thought. Never seen a gorilla swear before. It's a red-letter day, but at least he looks all right. I asked him in English to be sure, and he assured me that he was unhurt but very mad at the bug people. "Yeah, me too," I agreed. "Maybe we'll get to hit them and tell them so." Another thump shook us. Again, I heard voices outside the ship, but these didn't sound like turtle-dillos. "Uh-oh, bug people!" Dragon signed, getting up with a growl. Wait, I exclaimed. "It sounds like there's a lot of them. Let's be quiet for a minute first, okay?" Dragon grudgingly agreed. Zephyr edged away from the gorilla, looking nervous. We all stood and listened to the chatter. I had no plan at this point. I just knew that charging out there in a towering rage was an easy way to get shot in the face. And I very much liked my face. There had to be a way to do this safely. Zephyr whispered, "Why did they take us? Are they only after the ship and they didn't check if anyone was on it?" I shook my head. "I don't know. I hope it's just the ship and they'll be open to putting us back where they found us, or outside the forest, near the police. But hey, I'm not picky." The room tipped again without warning, and we scrambled to hold on. The floor moved slowly upward and then down, then the room shuddered. I heard bug voices again, all clicks and hisses, unsettling sounds. I didn't want to be prejudiced, of course, but it was unnerving to my human hindbrain. The fact that I knew they could kill us on sight didn't help. A new vibration and sideways motion. I clawed my way up to where the view screens were still partly operational. The view out the front showed what looked like a distant warehouse ceiling, slowly moving past. Windows let in sunshine. At least we hadn't rocketed up to space. I blinked as a doorway whooshed by close to the camera, leaving us in a new room and making me wonder exactly how much of the ship had actually come with us. The motion stopped. Again we were lifted and set down carefully. Voices resumed. Bangs, clangs, and the creaks of metal panels filled the air. Sounded like the ship was being dismantled. A draft gusted through the room. The hull was breached nearby. A pair of big-eyed faces appeared in front of the camera. I flinched, but they couldn't see me. "Guess they are after the ship," I said, glancing at my companions. "You guys still okay?" Dragon joined me before Zephyr could. The big guy had a musky smell and was surprisingly warm, like a furry heater appearing 2 inches away. Apparently, personal space was less of an issue in gorilla culture. Good to know. When Dragon reached over my shoulder with a grunt, he made 3 gestures toward the screen. He pointed at the bug-like aliens, made a fist, then flipped them off. I told him that I agreed wholeheartedly. "We should arm ourselves," Zephyr said from the other side of the room, rooting through the fallen trash. "They'll reach us soon, even if we don't make a move." He had a point. I looked around to see if anything looked useful, but as soon as I turned away from the view screen, a louder voice shouted in clicks and screeches, and the dismantling stopped. Footsteps clattered away. "Think it's safe to leave?" I asked. "We'll have to try," Zephyr declared. He had already pulled something weapon-like from the floor and Dragon was heading for the doorway, having gotten the idea despite not knowing the language. I shrugged and picked up an alien wrench, following the others out into the hall. Maybe we could stop by the kitchen and get that net launcher. Nope. The kitchen was gone. The hallway turned one corner and cut off abruptly, leaving us staring out at the interior of a cluttered alien warehouse. Quiet swear words and mutterings of surprise were the order of the hour. We ventured forward like puppies encountering snow for the first time, stepping off the edge of the hallway and down onto the floor, like we expected it to go away at any moment. Nothing happened other than sounds of industry from the next room. I stepped away from the ship enough to see how much had actually come with us. As I watched, the invisibility field flickered before retracting toward the point of the ship. This chunk was small. "Wow, we got lucky!" Zephyr turned to look and jumped visibly. That almost cut us in half, he yelped. They definitely didn't know we were there. Yeah, I agreed. Let's get wherever we're going before they come back. And hey, at least the rest of the ship is probably visible now too. Even if it's not, I'm sure those people can find it, Zephyr agreed. It's still covered in our mud balls. Now all we have to do is survive to find a way home. Yeah, speaking of which, I said with a deliberate look around, this doesn't look like the inside of a spaceship. The angles and joints of the ceiling looked distinctly like quick construction meant for early colonization efforts, or temporary housing after natural disasters, or apparently criminals. Zephyr followed my gaze and hissed in sudden fury. He scrambled between crates and boxes to glare at a logo up close. I didn't recognize it, a red symbol on a pinkish wooden crate, some alien glyph that I couldn't read. What is... My cousin, Zephyr said slowly, bought the poison that killed him in tins with this symbol. Oh man, I didn't know what to say. He hefted his maybe weapon and stumped off. Let's wreck the place. That might be a bit hasty, I said, hurrying after. Dragon signed a question at me. The bad bugs killed his cousin, I told him. And they keep things here. Zephyr wants to break something, but I think we should escape before they kill us too. Dragon raised a fist in reply, ready to slam it into the nearest box. Wait, I begged. We need to at least see where we are, see how many are going to come shoot us, and which way we'll need to run, so we can destroy as much as possible before they catch us. Dragon listened, and when I repeated the entreaty in his own language, Zephyr did too. I breathed a little easier. There, that's a window. Let's look. I found another wooden crate underneath it, glad to see that it looked strong enough to hold our weight. The window was so high that it might have been deemed not worth it if we had to do any acrobatics to see out of it. The view outside showed a grassy blue plain with cliffs on the far side, as far as I could see either way, actually. Dragon said nothing, but Zephyr muttered something about blasphemy. What? They put their smuggler's base in the footprint of the moon, he exclaimed. How dare they? I racked my brain for knowledge of important landmarks. That's a canyon, right? A crater-looking place with a river in the wet season? Yes, Zephyr said. How dare they? I had other thoughts. They must have some of that invisibility tech shielding the place from satellite view. The footprint is pretty big, right? Because it looks like this base is in the middle. That leaves us with some terrible odds for running to safety before we're spotted. If we wanted to, Zephyr retorted, setting his beak stubbornly. Dragon opened a crate with a loud creak, making me flinch. Then an engine sound from the next room gave me an idea. Compromise, I said in desperation. Let's peek into that hangar. Give me a second. I darted toward the door, weaving between crates on my long human legs, hoping that neither of them caused a ruckus. I crouched to peer around the doorframe, trying to breathe quietly. All right, that's the hangar portion of this place, I thought, scanning the vast area that held half a dozen small shuttles. Ceiling hatches still open, side doors closed. Looks like other storage rooms there. Oh hey, everybody's doing a group huddle by the huge boxes. Zephyr joined me with Dragon ambling behind him. What's your plan? Zephyr whispered. I pointed. Let's hijack a ship. We can shoot up the place with it, then escape afterwards. Hopefully. While I was half hoping he'd say no, what a ridiculous idea, he just nodded. Good enough. We'll need proper weapons, though. What's yours do? I asked, pointing at the thing he held. Zephyr rotated it. I think it's a paralysis gun. He seemed mostly certain. The handholds were definitely made for mantis-like wrist joints to slot into. I realized that the little fingers those bug aliens had on their wrists were a similar size to Zephyr's. Perfect fit. We could test it, but they might hear. I looked at my wrench, then around at the room full of boxes and tools. There's probably other useful stuff here, but I don't know if we have the time or the knowledge to find it. Dragon started haphazardly opening crates. These lids were quieter than the first, so I just winced slightly. With a worried look at the doorway, I moved to peer into boxes and look over the tools laid out near our ship segment. Those were the most promising. Alien tech or no, some things had clear purposes and obvious on switches. Also, the aliens had duct tape, or at least something that looked like it. One quick invention montage later, peppered with glances toward the door, I had a plasma cutter taped in the on position, tied to a cable. With Zephyr and Dragon standing back, I made sure no one was watching, then started spinning it. I took aim and launched the thing out into the hangar, where it soared in a heroic arc to land on the far side of the room in a cart full of breakable things. The bug aliens flinched at the shattering crash. We raced out the door as quietly as possible. I was certain that one of the bugs would see us. Those eyes surely had a better range of vision than mine did. But the broken stuff seemed important. They were much too busy yelling at each other to notice. We ducked behind a cart near our chosen ship, a sleek, pearlescent thing. The cart was empty, and the loading hatch of the ship was open, with boxes visible inside that held another label Zephyr recognized. He hissed to himself, nearly incandescent with rage. But he followed my lead when I was sure our way was clear. All I carried was another cutting torch. We got lucky. No one saw us creep into the ship's hold. There we found deep shadows and crates to hide behind, with enough space for all three of us. The shouting was still loud as we settled into place, with Zephyr's shell bumping against the wall and Dragon almost knocking over a box. I tried to catch my breath in silence. Infernally lucky. I don't know how long we waited there. I'm sure it was a shorter time than it felt like, but the bottom line was, no one found us while the alien smugglers cleaned up the mess and assigned blame and probably looked into the other room. No one checked the ship, or at least no one did more than peer through the doorway. The hatch closed. I breathed a little easier, but only a little. Zephyr shuffled in place. I think they've started the engines. I nodded. Yeah, I can't tell if we've lifted off or not. This ship probably moves fast, so we'll be gone as soon as it does. We should catch them by surprise, Zephyr said. Right, I said, still full of doubts about this plan. Zephyr was already out of his hiding place, hefting the paralysis gun. This way, he said, striding toward the interior door. I slid out and urged Dragon to join us. The gorilla was happy to. He asked, hands flying in the dim light. Yes, I said. Hopefully we can figure out how to steer the ship, or convince one of the bugs to fly it for us. Honestly, our odds are not good. Dragon just grunted and followed the trail that Zephyr blazed between crates. I glanced ahead at the little turtledillo. He was walking with purpose, every inch the badass action hero in the body of an adorable little accountant fellow. I kept my opinions to myself. He had a cousin to avenge, and I had a planetary alliance to salvage. I followed closely, listening for anything that sounded dangerous. All I heard were Dragon's footsteps, which were admittedly dangerous, but not the kind I was concerned with. The door to the rest of the ship was a big one. Zephyr guessed about the button before I stepped forward, and luckily for all of us, he guessed right. The door rattled as it slid aside. I hid with my cutting torch held at the ready, but Zephyr and Dragon didn't. When no sounds of battle greeted my ears, I stepped back out to join them in entering the corridor that looked like the ones in the half-a-ship that we'd just left. Definitely the same technology base at work here. Why did the smugglers want to get that bit of the ship back, I wondered, to keep it out of enemy hands? Then why not take the whole thing? I guess it wouldn't fit in the cargo bay, but still. Why that part? It occurred to me that the thrice-be-damned inertial dampeners were probably housed in the cockpit area of the ship. When they cut it free, they shut it off, and that explained all the stuff falling on us earlier, not to mention the invisibility field. That kind of stuff has to be valuable. All right, it's starting to make sense, but I can't say how they'll react to finding us now. Probably going to shoot us and pretend they never saw us. We made our quiet-footed way down the hall. Distant bangs, footsteps, and voices soon filled the void, getting closer with every moment. There was nowhere to hide. A corner waited up ahead. I hoped it led to a safe room and not a gang of murderous smuggler bugs. As it turned out, it was a bit of both. A yellow-orange bug person walked toward us around the corner, only to pull up short when Dragon roared at him. I brandished my torch and Zephyr shot him with what was indeed a paralysis gun. It was very effective. The guy locked up, teetered, then slowly fell onto one side with an awkward thump. Zephyr laughed in delight. Dragon bared long teeth at the frozen enemy, sniffing him from up close, then making a dismissive noise and a rude gesture before moving past. "Sorry about that," I said in rockback as I walked by, "but you really shouldn't have kidnapped us accidentally and stolen a bunch of animals from Earth and lost them in an alien forest, not to mention smuggling the other stuff." I stopped, turned back to give him a good kick, then moved on. Asshat. No one else walked into the path of Zephyr's paralysis gun, more's the pity. The hallway was empty when we turned the corner. Several doorways lined the sides, dark, threatening portals that could spill enemies as soon as we turned our backs on them. Zephyr walked first, proudly holding his gun at the ready, until Dragon decided the turtledillo was going too slowly and thudded on ahead. Zephyr protested, but let him be. I didn't argue the decision. Near the end, a doorway was open, with bright walls instead of darkness. Dragon ambled up to it and stuck his head around the corner. Whatever he saw must have looked safe since he promptly swung inside. Zephyr and I hurried after him. The room felt like someone's private cabin. That was probably a bed, that was a weird chair, and those were cases for belongings. But the most eye-catching thing was the porthole on the wall, which showed a view of space. A familiar planet was rapidly dwindling in size. "Oh," Zephyr said in a small voice, lowering his gun. "How do we get back?" "I guess we ask nicely." "Right." He raised it again and headed for the door. "Let's go." I scanned the room for a better weapon than the cutting torch, but found none. Just a distressed gorilla. "Not Earth?" he asked with a whine, pointing at the window. "No," I told him. "Our best plan is to convince the bad bugs to take us back. We might have to scare them a bit." He was out the door before I was, almost stepping on Zephyr. The ship wasn't all that big, though it had a lot of ominous dark rooms. Conserving power, I guess. Zephyr led the way toward the end of the corridor with his gun thing at the ready and Dragon looming over him. I kept an eye out for surprises with my torch raised. We reached the door without incident. The hall branched off into another empty corridor, as quiet as the first, though who knew how good the insulation was on these walls? I sure didn't. Anything could be happening in the next room. If Zephyr had any doubts, he kept them to himself. With just a moment's hesitation, he pressed probably a button to open the door. Correct again. It slid open. Startled insect faces turned to look at us from every direction. Too many for such a small room. Zephyr took aim and they swarmed us. I yelled, waving my torch like I was warding off bats, but Dragon roared and charged into the cockpit. The bugs immediately lost interest in me. Dragon swatted them aside in fury, which might have been heartening to see if not for the delicate electronics on every surface. I can't say for certain who did the damage. It could have been a bug alien sprawling back, a monstrously strong fist, or even a shot from Zephyr's paralysis gun. It probably wasn't me. Probably. It definitely changed our trajectory, if the windshield opposite the door was any indication. The stars all slid sideways. A silver shape wove into view that I recognized with a start. It was the only space station in this neck of the woods. Were we that far already? The next things to come into view came faster. Pieces of broken spaceships, followed by space rocks and miscellaneous garbage. Just as I remembered the floating junk heap that spacers complained about, our ship slammed into something. Apparently. I say apparently because the inertial dampeners made sure we didn't feel a thing, though the view jolted something fierce. I did sense a whoosh of air, which cut off abruptly. The piercing red lights and the whooping alarms seemed to be bad news. The way every bug alien scrambled from the room was worse. I pressed myself against a wall. "What happened?" Zephyr asked as Dragon stumbled to a halt. Creaks echoed through the floor. "Damage!" I said. "Run!" Then I booked it after the smugglers, hoping I wasn't about to die. Neither death by bug alien nor by explosive decompression sounded like a great choice. My guess was that the ship had lost a piece and sealed the leak, but badly. The walls were creaking around me. Dragon caught up, and I turned guiltily to make sure Zephyr was coming. He was, though panting hard already. Tiny legs, but we were there, wherever there was. I heard shouted bug language around the corner. I slowed to look carefully. Dragon didn't. He just charged again with another bellow, leaving me to scramble after. Round escape pods lined the walls. Panicking bug aliens of every color scrambled into them, doing their best to evade the terrifying thing roaring in their direction. Dragon landed one solid punch on an exoskeleton's shoulder, sending the gray mantis person sprawling into a pod. The door shut instantly, leaving Dragon to beat on it in rage. I looked around wildly as those creaks got louder and Zephyr stumbled up to join me. Several pods left, no telling how much time. "Hurry and get in," I said to Zephyr. He nodded as I darted toward the closest one. As soon as I left him, I heard a thump and yelp. I whirled to see one last bug alien wrench the gun from Zephyr's hands, holding it in spiky brown arms while kicking the little turtle-dillo with one leg of many. I yelled and ran. Dragon beat me there. The alien smuggler took aim at Dragon but couldn't focus on all of us. I threw my torch. Zephyr headbutted him, knocking him off balance so the shot at Dragon went wide. My torch also missed, but it gave him something else to think about while Dragon closed the distance. The bug guy made a clear decision. He ducked and ran for the pods, dodging the gorilla's grasp and giving Zephyr another kick on the way past. The turtle-dillo was knocked off his feet, but I was confident that his shell was strong enough to take the hit. I was also lucky to be out of the bug's way since I was ignored in favor of escape. 2 heartbeats later, the escape pod was gone, and the ship creaked ominously around us. A door slammed into place on the hallway we'd come from. Horrendous wrenching sounds echoed through the ship, and air gusted sideways. "Let's go!" I shouted. Dragon scooped up Zephyr and carried him like a football toward the nearest pod. I followed. They stepped inside and the door shut in my face. Dragon turned to stare in panic through the window while I tried not to panic myself. "Push the button!" I shouted, pointing at the red thing on the far wall. "I'll get the next one!" Dragon nodded solemnly, not pausing to set down the struggling Zephyr before pressing it. The pod blasted away into the night. The ship creaked louder and I heard the sound of crumpling metal. I threw myself into the next pod, slammed my hand on the button, and fell over as the pod jetted away. I know there's no sound in space, but I could have sworn I heard a kaboom behind me. I hoped the pod had good navigation abilities.